directed by Stanley Kubrick.
He's perfectionist.
Hollywood foreign press is kind of a very loose group of guys and gals.
Most actors spend their lives chasing the spotlight. Jack Nicholson, he chased something darker. Behind every twisted smile, behind every unhinged performance, there was someone off camera. Watching, guiding, provoking. Not handlers, not agents, directors, but not just any directors. These were the ones Jack couldn't say no to. The ones who got under his skin. The ones who saw the chaos and said, "Good, now let's go deeper." And while the world remembers Nicholson's madness on screen, the truth is that madness had a conductor. These are the 6 directors Jack trusted more than anyone. And by the time they were done with him, he wasn't just acting anymore. He was unraveling. Most actors feared working with Stanley Kubrick. Jack Nicholson didn't. He welcomed it. Their only collaboration, The Shining, wasn't just a horror film, it was a war of wills. Kubrick was notorious for perfectionism, shooting over 100 takes of the same scene, sometimes changing direction mid-sentence. For most actors, it was exhausting. For Jack, it was exhilarating. He once said, "Stanley didn't want you to act the scene. He wanted you to live it until it broke you." And break him, it nearly did. The isolation, the repetition, the endless hallway takes. But Jack understood something others didn't. Kubrick wasn't torturing his actors. He was trying to peel them open. In one take, Nicholson reportedly slammed the bathroom door 60 times, each with a little more rage, a little more madness. By the end, his face wasn't performing anymore. It was becoming. Kubrick pushed him to the edge, and Jack stayed there, willingly. Because in that chaos, something real emerged. He didn't always agree with Kubrick. He didn't have to. What mattered was the result, and what they created together wasn't just iconic, it was haunted. Nicholson later said, "Stanley could be a tyrant, but when the scene was over, and you saw what he captured, you'd let him do it all over again." But Kubrick wasn't the only one who could crack Jack wide open. Some didn't need control at all, just connection. Stanley Kubrick pulled Jack apart, piece by piece. Mike Nichols? He didn't have to. He just saw him. They never made a full film together, but they came close, more than once. Behind the scenes of Wolf, Nichols hovered like a ghost director, influencing the tone, reshaping scenes, guiding without demanding. Jack admired that, because Mike didn't shout, he listened. He had this quiet precision, like a surgeon with a script. And Jack, who could sniff out phoniness in a second, called Nichols one of the few directors who knew how to ask without ego. They weren't fire and ice. They were something rarer. 2 men who didn't need to prove they were in charge. Nichols once said, "Jack acts like he already knows the ending, but he's still surprised by it." That insight shook Nicholson, because it meant Nichols wasn't watching the performance. He was watching the man behind it. They'd sit for hours, not rehearsing lines, but talking about tone, motives, what the scene meant. And Jack trusted him. He once said, "Mike could direct me without saying a word. Just a look, a pause, and I knew." They never got their masterpiece, but the chemistry was there. A phantom collaboration that still lingers in interviews, in unshot scripts, in what could have been. But where Nichols used subtlety, the next director used raw instinct and knew Jack better than almost anyone. Some directors direct. Bob Rafelson dug. If there was one filmmaker who knew exactly how to get inside Jack Nicholson's head, it was him. They weren't just collaborators, they were co-conspirators. 5 easy pieces. The King of Marvin Gardens. The Postman Always Rings twice. Each film stripped Jack further down, past the swagger, past the grin, into something quieter, meaner, more true. Rafelson didn't chase performance. He chased confession. Jack once said, "Bob never told me what to do. He just made the room dangerous enough that I had to find something honest." Their relationship wasn't smooth. It was rough-edged, volatile, even brotherly. There were arguments, walk-offs, long silences, but always respect. Because Rafelson didn't just understand Jack, he trusted him. He gave him scenes that didn't need explaining, only feeling. And Nicholson delivered. In 5 easy pieces, that diner scene, the one with the toast, wasn't just iconic. It was autobiographical rage. He later admitted, "That wasn't acting. That was me on a bad day," with Bob pointing a camera at it. There's a reason Nicholson kept returning to Rafelson, because with him, the performance wasn't pretend. It was a mirror. But not every director needed friendship. Some, like the next one, brought out Jack's best by simply refusing to flinch. If Bob Rafelson understood Jack, Milos Forman challenged him. On the set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nicholson wasn't the king. He was the test subject. Forman, the Czech-born director with a quiet voice and iron will, didn't direct with flair. He directed with pressure. He'd sit back, let the scene unfold, and then say nothing. Minutes would pass. Jack would fidget. Then, finally, again. And Jack hated it, at first. He was used to being the sharpest guy in the room, the one who knew when a take worked. But with Forman, nothing was ever quite right. And that uncertainty? That's what cracked him open. He'd later say, "Milos made me doubt everything." And from that came McMurphy. The tension was real. Jack once walked off set for 2 days after a heated disagreement about a scene's tone. He was done, or so everyone thought. But when he came back, he delivered the scene that won him the Oscar. Forman didn't comfort his actors. He cornered them, then waited to see what they'd do. Jack called him a quiet assassin, a man who smiled through resistance, then stole the best performance you didn't even know you had. It wasn't friendship, it wasn't warmth, but it was mastery. And the next director? He didn't need to corner Jack. He just needed to show up, because his presence alone changed everything. Some directors direct the story. Roman Polanski bends the reality around it. Chinatown wasn't just another role for Jack Nicholson. It was the role. The one that carved his face into film history. And Polanski? He didn't just direct it. He engineered it, like a trap that closed in slowly, on everyone. Their partnership was loaded with tension, the kind that doesn't come from disrespect, but from two men who refused to blink first. Polanski was controlling, demanding, relentless. Jack was volatile, brilliant, unyielding. It should have exploded. Instead, it created a masterpiece. Polanski would reshoot scenes endlessly, not to perfect them, but to break them open. A blink here, a pause there, everything mattered. One day, Jack showed up knowing his lines, ready to shoot. Polanski walked over and cut a chunk of his hair on the spot. No explanation, just control. Jack didn't flinch. He just lit a cigarette and said, "Better make it worth it." That was the energy on set, calculated chaos. Polanski once said, "Jack doesn't perform. He absorbs the film until he's bleeding it out." Nicholson later admitted that Chinatown changed him. Not just as an actor, as a person. Because Roman didn't just shape the film. He shaped Jack's silence, his pauses, his restraint, his danger. There's a reason Nicholson called Chinatown his proudest performance. And the reason? Polanski wouldn't let him get comfortable. But for all the directors who pushed, prodded, and pulled, there was one who didn't have to say anything at all, because Jack already worshipped him. Every actor has a North Star. For Jack Nicholson, that was Elia Kazan. They never made a film together, never stood across from each other on a set. But Kazan's fingerprints are all over Jack's performances. In the stillness, in the simmer, in the sudden snap of emotion that doesn't wait for permission. Because Kazan wasn't just a director. He was the architect of modern acting. He gave the world Brando, Dean, Clift. And in quiet corners of early Hollywood, he gave Jack something else, the blueprint. Before Nicholson was Jack, he was just another young actor, hungry, angry, searching. He didn't learn from classes. He learned from watching Kazan. He once said, Kazan didn't just direct actors. He taught them to bleed with purpose. When Jack finally met him, it wasn't casual. It was spiritual. A quiet meeting in a crowded room. No small talk, no jokes. Just two men, one legacy. Kazan looked at him and said, "You waited until you were ready. That's why it worked." Jack never forgot that, never stopped quoting it. Because Kazan wasn't just a hero. He was the reason Nicholson knew what to do when the silence hit the room. There's no award for that, no headline, no footage. Just a private truth between a student and the ghost who made him possible. These 6 directors didn't just shape Jack Nicholson's career, they shaped the limits of it. And with each of them, Jack found something he couldn't fake. Fear, trust, resistance, legacy. Because behind every legend, there's someone who dared to direct him. Jack Nicholson never followed the rules. He rewrote them. One scene, one stare, one explosion at a time. But if you trace the madness back to its source, you'll find 6 figures standing in the shadows. They didn't try to tame him. They didn't try to flatter him. They just saw him. Raw, unfinished, electric. Kubrick pushed him to the edge. Nichols gave him stillness. Rafelson opened the wound. Foreman lit the fuse. Polanski sharpened the silence. And Kazan? Kazan handed him the mirror. Together they shaped something we still don't fully understand. An actor who never played a role. He became it. And when those directors stepped back and let the camera roll, Jack Nicholson didn't act. He unraveled. So the question isn't who directed him best. It's who dared to hold the lens while he turned into something unforgettable. Who's your pick? Who pulled the most out of Jack? And why? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, the ones behind the curtain, inside the madness, and under the skin, you know what to do. Subscribe. We're just getting started.